Flow forms are another interesting thing people see. They observe nature and the way, again, nature would clean itself. So flow forms are called pulsating craters, which reoxygenate water, thus cleansing it. So if you're a very artistic person, you could create this form. At which time, if you molded these forms and you stack them in series and you use a fish tank pump and you pump it up, the water goes down, goes through the vortexes and comes out on the backside clean. So if you had a, I don't know, koi pond, you could use this. If you had a large waste area, maybe at a pig farm or something like this, they also could utilize this form in order to do oxygenation or cleanse the water. Okay, so from an artistic purpose, oxygenation purpose, these are ways that we can mimic nature to create a specific outcome, in this instance, cleaning water. This is a home in India. A lot of times people ask me, especially on the natural building, but I want to have an earthen floor, Bo. How can I do that? Well, you know, clay cracks, and you're going to have to maintain it. But if you did, think about this. This is honeycomb bricks. So they made bricks, not in the traditional square. They made hexagons. Then they put the hexagons together, and then they grouted in the hexagons, and then that shape is very strong, just like the beehive. So why does a beehive use hexagons? Well, because during heat, cold or hot, it doesn't move. If it moved, right, it would break it's a case for larvae, right? So then that would break the home for the baby, so that's not very good. So they used a shape that inherently is very strong. It doesn't move in any direction. So that would be a good usage of that shape to help my floors not to crack. We can look at sinuine, or what's called a serpentine or wavy forms. We see that all the time in nature. We also, being 60% of our body is water, are we a vessel to carry around water? It would seem if we had a vote, water would be more of us than other. Considering 10% of the other mass on us is not human DNA, guys, it's bacteria, then we only compromise of our total standing body, 30% human DNA. Maybe we are just a vessel for water and bacteria, I don't know. But water likes to move in sinuous curves. Guess what we also tend to do? Move in sinuous curves. And when we do landscaping and when we make our own, what do people do if we make a 90-degree corner? They cut the corner. What do people do if you make it too big of a, they cut it? So in a landscaping situation, we can appreciate how people naturally like to move, not too angular, not too sinuous, in a nice sinuous curve. That creates edge. Water likes to do that. We like to do that. Interesting coincidence. P.A. Yeomans, in his studying water and water's relationship to moving on contour, P.A. Yeoman's view of water flow and contour was always that water moves at 90 degrees to contour. So this is a hillside. We're going to do this a lot more in the earthworks day because it takes practice to see these, say, patterns, to appreciate how to read topography. We're lucky on this course because if we'd have any problems with that, we have a certified topographer. Yeah. Mr. Allen's going to teach that part of the course. No. At this point, we're going to look at that, and that's how we lay out on contour our swale, and we can bring what would appear to be water uphill. It's not actually uphill. That's an optical illusion. It's completely level. So we use this phenomenon, if you will, of water moving on contour to move water across the landscape without energy. If we go to streams, we can see stream restoration. Sometimes a stream, depending on the actual geology, gets damaged and or it doesn't have rocks in order for the stream, because people believe that the rocks that we see in streams and jetties, because a stream is fully capable to pick up a 30-ton rock and move it. Can do it anytime it wants to. Why doesn't it? So when it gets it there and there's the water is being obstructed, creating the jetty and the vortex, and our whitewater rafter guys really like that, right? The stream has the power at any time, even without a flood, to move the rock. Why does it not move the rock? Why don't all the rocks get pushed down and it just goes in a straight line? It doesn't want to. It tries to place the rocks to create vortexes. We can see that after flash floods and people go to study and cars have gotten brought into rivers. And then they look at where the cars end up. Yeah? And they almost always end up like an artificial or rock. So it creates another vortex. And the river did not have to place it there. It didn't place all the cars at the same place, right? It strategically drops them down the river to create more vortexes or clean itself. You'd have to wonder if it thinks about it. From a permaculture standpoint, if we know that water likes to clean itself and it has these ways of doing that, we can artificially recreate those and help water to do that. One way is artificial wetlands, or to construct wetlands on our property. A way to think about it is, if I have water that enters my property, whatever I do with it during my processes, my systems to create my yield, at the end when it leaves my property, it should be as clean or cleaner than when it entered my property. In some instances, you may have water that enters your properties from your neighbors, and you don't know what they did exactly, right? So I still can clean it if it leaves my property. So here at Raktamachat, we have a large wetlands constructed at the end of our water flow so that we can assure that the water that enters the next system, which is actually a communal stream for the local people to do rice, would be cleaner than when it entered our system. So it's not going to have sediments, it's not going to have silts, okay? And you know, those all being very valuable, that's our nutrients and our resources. I really wouldn't want any of that to leave my property. So I'm being good to them and good to us at the same time. So collecting and dispersing and or dendritic patterns. These patterns we see all the time, whether they're in river systems, they're in trees, roots, all of these systems. And we're going to try to look for those and how we can utilize them. These are called branched projections. This is the way that water goes in a delta. It's the exact same projection of the tree, stylization of branches. And if you look underground, the roots make the same projection. We have the same projections within us, how we move and flow. Also, our thought patterns, that's a projection of an options grid. Interestingly enough, we even use and graphically represent our thoughts as projections. And there's patterns as control. So as we talked about the Roman grid that we still around the world live within, these grids were used to control the cities in order, you can't go in and out without the gate and without a pass, all that good stuff. But now we're kind of stuck within these, and with our modern transportation systems, they are very inefficient and they utilize a lot of energy and wasted time. People sitting in traffic. So we could look to ways, later we'll look for ways that we can change that flow to be more sinuous or following branched projections, as we can see here with the layout of roads off of a main grid. So the Roman grid, natural movement is not in straight lines. Okay? We don't see energy in nature moving in straight lines. Okay? There's no curves in nature, guys, though, by the way, just so you're clear here. There's no such thing as a circle. Can't prove that one. Circles just intersections of points. Okay? Computer can't draw it. We can't draw it. No artist can draw it. Okay? And the only way you can see it is with perspective. How close are you? I back you up. I keep backing you up. It turns straight. It's just how close. Get really, 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 really close. That's straight. It's curved only on the degrees. So we're going to look how we utilize that phenomenon. Again, it's the same phenomenon that water would run 90 degrees. It's totally backwards to what we would think. Who would think water would turn a 90-degree angle if we set it like sinuous curves? But it'll only turn 90 degrees on a sinuous curve. But that's only in one point. That point's so small, and it keeps doing that on every curve. Thus, the projection or perspective of a curve. So we have to live with lots of patterns. People have been employing patterns on our landscape and our lives forever. Probably we're going to keep doing it because you came to a class to learn how to make patterns to control landscapes, animals, and people. That's what your pattern will do. Your pattern will elicit control. For what purpose is what we're going to ask. Why are you trying to do this pattern? Do you know what this pattern will do? So here's city repair. This is in Seattle, Washington. Intersection repair and common space development. We have created negative spaces. We created a lot of spaces that were not for humans. You're not supposed to go in the road. We even make it black. It's a black top. We don't go there. Don't even bike there. Don't do anything. But what's really interesting, if we change the shapes, the patterns, and the colors, the textures, a negative space can turn into a positive space. So in this instance, instead of everybody not interacting because we created a big X through the middle of the settlement, what if you blocked the streets, right? And what if you turned that into a common space? Yeah? Park the cars on the peripheral, walk into this thing. All of a sudden, that changes. So there's subdivisions and places that are starting to do that. They're starting to say, well, we don't want to exclude people. We want to include them. And they flip or change the pattern, and that changes the usage. So the pattern affects the usage. So that brings us to patterns have been with us forever. Social interaction is basically what patterns do. And if we look at tribal places around the world, whether it's in Africa, to South America, to the Indians, or to Alaska with Eskimos, most of the time they would form their social interactions around a common space. So there's a common space that's not owned by anyone. Each house faces towards the common space. Typically, maybe the head person's house is in the middle. And that's how we saw that. It's only recently that we've changed that pattern. But what if we were a permaculture designer and I want to try to design a new pattern? I want to change this paradigm that we're currently living in, and I look to the older solutions that were there before. And what if and that's a master plan at the below of a residential subdivision, to where the houses all share common courtyards, so that you would create a pattern of living that would integrate people to react with each other on a more daily basis than separating every yard by a fence. So the only way to get to your neighbors is to almost have to walk out your front door, around all the way through your driveway, around their fence, to go back over to knock on their door, because they never go in the front yard, so you don't even know who they are, right? Well, this one would be more inclusive. Brazil has started programs, and other places in the world, where they noticed that the, say, systems that they were for transmitting people, whether mass rapid transit, train systems, busing systems, were all linear. And it would basically take people out the city centers. So at night, the city centers kind of collapsed, right? Well, here they went in and they started to put circles to connect it, and they reversed the flow. So now, and the city center becomes dynamic, people coming in at night versus everyone leaving. So in this instance, they're having a circular system. It's bringing people back into the inner cities, okay? Here we can see where their designers are starting to think about the human interaction with systems, our time interaction with systems. So here the bus comes to the train, and instead of getting off the train, walking down to the platform, waiting for the bus, they actually come together. You walk directly from the bus, from the train into the bus and into the train. And they stopped that time. And that might have only been 3 minutes per person, but 1 million people use that system per day. So that's 3 million minutes a day for the rest of that city's life. This is the type of thing where design can give us back our free time. That's what we want to look for. So just 1 minute a day on your design is a minute a day for the rest of your life. That's a lot of minutes. So this is another instance. We can see here there's a very big erosionary event, what we would describe as a gully onto the left. This is the Amata village in New Zealand. So they went in and they contour terraced. Okay, so we'll see in an earthworks. The earthworks that they did to contour terrace, that is a pattern. The pattern that they imparted onto this hillside is creating the food growth, because before, the only thing that probably could have survived on that hillside is maybe a sheep. Sheep, that's it. You couldn't even got anything else to grow there. You don't have enough water to grow vegetables. All of a sudden, with water harvesting or passive water harvesting, and the pattern, the usage of the property changes. So what was the domain of only possibly a herbivore becomes a domain of other systems. So whether you'd like to grow trees, or you'd like to grow vegetables, or you'd like to grow any of these other things, it changes because of the nature of the pattern. So the harvesting of water allows us to grow different things. If there's no water, pretty much just grass, first successional grasses. And the only things that have been adopted in the world to eat first successional grasses are herbivores.